Welcome everyone to a quick video I wanted to make for some time, namely about PC hardware monitoring and sensors. Because the issue right now today is each time you buy a new board, not a bit advertisement, just the last stuff I built here, right? The stuff latest and greatest. You buy it, you unbox it, you build your PC, upgrade your PC, swap the motherboard. You don't have hardware monitoring and sensors on Linux, BSD, sometimes even at Windows, unless you install third-party software, HWinfo and whatnot. And so especially on Linux, of course on Windows there are often at least some vendor tools and stuff, but the problem is there is no standard, right? All the historically since socket 7, illustration purposes only, right? Since 386, 486 usually didn't have temperature sensors, right? This stuff runs so slow. But then I guess somewhere around socket 7, as far as I remember, vendors started to connect hardware sensors, usually with temperature probe under the CPU socket, and also because the stuff became more power hungry and needed fans and stuff, right? Usually we have IT87 and variants, somewhere here. Just multiplying stuff, or Novoton now, and that is also the stuff, right? That so not only there's not a standard, but the vendors for this very simple temperature probe or GPIO integrated circuits keep the stuff even secret, because intellectual property. That is also why the maintainers of the Linux IT87 driver of such simple temperature sensing, hardware monitoring, fans and stuff control stopped maintaining this, because we are done, we had enough. IT87 integrated technologies, whatever company, is not even freaking providing the datasheet, right? And the laughable thing is we get basically more information from Intel and AMD about their CPU. Yes, not all, but at least 1000 pages of datasheet. But tiny little few pin, low pin count connected hardware monitoring ICs, that is intellectual property trade secrets, right? When nobody wants to build a few cent chip here, clone and copy this low quality stuff, just want to write a freaking driver, right? And I would say, long story short, it is time for PC vendors to abandon their random stuff. Another problem is, and like their proprietary solution, because it's even worse. So not only ASUS, Gigabyte, MSI and so on, all the ASRock and whatever, and also Intel first class, first tier Intel direct mainboards and so on. Not only do they randomly source sensors, you can't even be sure next year you're happy with Linux or BSD implementation, or even your Windows solution. Although I hear the Windows people are pretty pissed with all their proprietary RGB and fan control stuff, which at times uses Electron apps and cloud and ZXT, watching you and all the other low quality software. It's not even amazing on Windows. Once upon a time we had standards, right? VGA, IDE, there were multiple bus controllers for IDE, for graphic adapters, for sound cards, right? The unofficial standards of Sound Blaster that people copied, or other sound system. And but standards, even more standards, right? USB HID. You don't need a freaking driver, because there are class standards for human interface devices, for storage devices, even for storage, including high performance external storage disks and floppies back in the day when they existed, right? It is time for freaking standard, right? I want to spread awareness of, I'm aware that my small channel cannot change this overnight, so share, like, subscribe, spread the word. I, as a developer, 25 years Linux kernel developer and surrounding embedded and stuff, I'm sick and tired of the stuff, right? I don't want to buy and freaking, this is also not cheap stuff, right? This is the most freaking, as much as I hate it, I didn't even need most of this stuff. It's like literally the only freaking mainboard I could get at the launch week of AMD Zen 4. And that's not cheap garbage crap, right? This is the most freaking expensive. Previously, the ASUS WS6 Ace, or X570 Ace, WS Ace, naming PC vendors. That was expensive, right? Previously my AM4 board was the most expensive. It's 320 20-ish euro. This even costed 600 whatever, right? So you buy the most expensive freaking mainboard with features you don't even want. All I wanted was a CPU. Basically don't need a VGA video card. I need to plug in one NVMe and all the other heating, chipset and whatnot stuff, heat producing and whatnot, I don't even need. And then I don't even have the most basic features to read the temperatures of this over-complex stuff. And even worse is when you look at the Linux kernel drivers, it's a constant catch-up with reverse engineering, right? Not the paid advertising, but just the random stuff we have here. So it's like, yeah, reverse engineering, disassembly and stuff, ARM and x86 and all the other stuff. And so it's a constant game of developers like me and all the other 10,000 Linux and open source developers out there, of catching up reverse engineering this stuff. Because what is worse, not only do these vendors connect randomly, cheaply sourced and intellectual property integrated circuits, nowadays, since a decade or so, they start to implement their own, naming it WMI for Windows Management Interface, which, fun fact, doesn't even have much to do with Windows standards. It's not like this would be a standard. And so what they do here is implementing, as far as I've seen, probably purely an ACPI software, so virtual bytecode stuff interpreted by your kernel, which is crazy concept as its own, right? So as if this sensors would not be bad enough, they hide the ACPI, they hide this implementation behind their own YoLo. So that is also not a standard, right? Just freaking make it a standard. Because you see here, they have their own ASUS Windows Management Interface monitoring GUID here of whatever random GUID thing you generate there on the day you invent this on the toilet or some meeting room, and a handful of bots, right? And so what this does is having access to the like some generic access to this temperature sensors, which in general is not the worst idea. Just if you look here, also the driver utilization, here's a Windows Management Interface found on AMD 500 series ASUS boards to read easy embedded controller registers, but it turned out that ASUS abandoned the interface. Well done, you invented their own proprietary garbage interface that you even abandoned, but it turned out the interface disappeared from Intel 600, also like AMD 500, Intel 600, whatever. Additionally, this interface was incredibly slow, right? So yeah, the operating system interpreting your shared multiplexed access to this random sensor ICs. Therefore, this driver was deprecated in favor of the ASUS EC Sensors driver. So like, yeah, APIs invented, APIs abandoned, and the result is we have in the Linux kernel of like not everything is working, right? Like maybe like half is working, like years and years later. Usually you see on your favorite Linux news sites, sensors is not working. New platform, sensors are not working, fan control is not working, fan speed reading is not working. And then years later, yay, a half-working driver by reverse engineering of humble people at home appeared, or is later deleted. So the thing is that everyone and their friends and their family and the kitchen sink and the coffee machine invented their own API stuff, right? So if you look here into Linux drivers hardware monitoring stuff, you find here the newer ASUS EC Sensors drivers and whatever, some, of course, in other products they didn't use it, so some other ASUS driver, an ASUS VMI Sensors driver, and of course the same for, okay, this is unrelated, then we have other random stuff. Some of those are direct access, which often doesn't work because some vendor proprietary ACPI nonsense is claiming the resources so that the Linux kernel would not even load your good old-fashioned direct access Novoton or IT87 driver unless you boot with ACPI enforce resources equals Lex or something of that sort. Yes, by the way, the IT87 and variants drivers for which there is no specification. And so then there is MSI, here's the IT87, so for good old direct access. Whatever, so like gods of others. I mean, you, of course, all those drivers you need, and that is the thing, right? Why is there not a freaking standard? Missed opportunity. We let cheap vendors who don't know what they are doing do their stuff, right? Without, as sad as it is, that would be Microsoft, Intel, and AMD thing 20 years ago to set up a standard, but no, they allowed, like instead of Microsoft, as much as I'm not happy with Microsoft and their market forces and so on, but in this case, it would have been good if Microsoft would have set in 20 years ago, now of course the ship sailed, right? A standard, a true Windows monitoring interface, some generic where you could enumerate those like generically, so everyone could implement this from Surface laptops to the Steam Deck and ASUS and Gigabytes and MSIs. It is greatest because, and this is what I'm asking for going forward, right? We need a freaking standard. It can't continue like this. Of course, the direct access drivers you still need. I mean, they are there. The ship has sailed. We need all those stuff. And in embedded boards, in integrated appliances and so on, they will be directly, I mean, they are on the hardware level connected, and you will not have on every embedded board implementing the standard. However, there should have been a standard, right? Similar to, please share, like, subscribe, notify your news sites, maybe pointing to this video, that there should also be for this low-level chips a standard, similar to everything previously implementing VGA, like in the 80s and 90s. And then everyone copied AdLib and the Sound Blaster or something of that sort. And even on the chip level, I would wish, there are of course JEDEC standards, right, which we recently implemented, the SPD 5118, SPD hub, and temperature sensing interface and EEPROM. There are of course standards like JEDEC, and what I ask for is, and so this is super simple, right? It's similar to USB HID. All you want is some number of fan channels and some number of temperature channels, and all I'm asking for going forward is we need a standard, right? Because otherwise for the next 20 years we will continue to have dozens of stuff, because here's the next thing. Of course, NZXT Kraken and stuff, but that is of course other stuff. We have MSI, so that is so many drivers. I saw it before the video. Was you not? Maybe it is possible we have this in another subdirectory. ASUS, so we have the stuff for ASUS, we have the stuff for Gigabyte, maybe in another channel, in another directory. That is in. I'm not the super greatest fan that this is in platform x86. That is comes with experience, and here are then even more. This is somehow, I don't know why. I don't really know why. It's probably nobody paid attention and Linus Torvalds didn't scream enough. I would think some of the other WMI driver should also be in platform. But or anyway, whether that makes sense or not is another thing. But so here we have more, right? ASA, and ironically some for this EEPC, right? It's ridiculous. Also, here Gigabyte, right? I'm not making this up. Gigabyte, GUID, DEADBEEF. Further questions, ladies and gentlemen, about the code quality and quality of YoLo'ing this? And then often they are mixed together, it's like querying build date and stuff. And I tested that, I believe, but maybe I did something wrong, but probably I don't. I tested this bloody Gigabyte driver with this board here and it didn't work. I mean, it's not in here, so I mean, I tried to make it work, but it didn't. So my X670E board, so lots of other boards, I mean, a handful of other boards are in here, but not mine. I added my ID here and it didn't work. So what this does is using this GUID to path that to the ACPI methods. Here, Gigabyte query integer. So in general, there is this concept of we are generalizing this behind some API. Just everyone rolled their own thing. Why could Gigabyte and ASUS not sit together in Taiwan together with MSI and who knows what, ASRock and Chaintech, Taiwan? Why could they not get their act together? Can you please do that eventually? Although, of course, as we've seen, people not happy, slow, like whatever. So I'm not saying that this implementation is amazing. Hey, it has DEADBEEF in its name, so it's like, yeah, thanks for nothing. And I'm not saying it should be done with ACPI. It could be some kind of generic USB HID interface where you have some reports and structures to communicate, to advertise what kind of reports and mapping, key mappings some mouse or keyboard can generate and send, even for your freaking Sun keyboard. And it could be so generic that USB HID is also used over Bluetooth, so, or like at least the underlying HID standard, so that the same kind of reports and queries could be made available over ACPI, over direct ISA port mapping via MMIO, whatnot, writing some registers and reading the results of number of channels, of names. This is not freaking rocket science, right? If someone, I'm even as usual willing to throw my name behind that. If I'm not expecting that ASUS and Gigabyte want to, but hey, if you want, I'm not even asking for money because this situation is so ridiculous, right? Even Xiaomi VMW, I didn't check even what that did, although this is apparently mostly for some keys. It's like 2023, or why is here not a copyright? Probably because 2023, 2022 or 1 or whatever. It's like people YOLO even their freaking keys to some embedded controller stuff here. It's like, seriously, you had one job of designing and shipping a working keyboard, and all you do is YOLOing your FN escape keys and stuff to random GUI. It's like, wow, why I wouldn't buy this laptop. But yeah, Toshiba, WMI, ACPI, ThinkPad stuff, of course, some old Sony stuff, but that is probably before that. As I said, MSI embedded controller, and laptops. So all of those will do some other stuff. Some will do function keys, some will even do RF kill for disabling Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And that's also a problem, right? That everything is YOLO together. They just throw everything but the kitchen sink into their Windows monitoring interface, including Windows monitoring only real with function keys, RF kill, RGB lighting, and other quirks and features coming next to you for your next generation mainboard. So yeah, it is set. That is the state, and that is why we can't continue can't have nice things. So yeah, the Gigabyte DEADBEEF driver that didn't work for me. Also, it looks so. If this is true, I mean, I just added the ID in there, right, and it didn't work. Maybe I made it. I mean, it's unlikely I made a typo. Also, maybe the sun and stars, whatever. But if it's true that my freaking new board does not support this particular DEADBEEF, hey, why don't they name it Dead Horse or Brain Dead as alternative creative GUID names? But if it's really true that my board really doesn't implement this, that means that Gigabyte also might have abandoned this interface, just like ASUS, because nah, YOLO too slow. So yeah, to sum it up, all I'm asking for is stop reinventing 20-year-old low pin count, GPIO, fan and temperature control, hardware monitoring. Get your act together. I know it's unlikely, but that's what I'm here for, pointing out the obvious and proposing solutions. And ironically, from the IT87, there is a clone. So as far, yeah, allegedly due to, according to this Linux driver for the IT87, SES, you can't make this up, right? Apparently 15 or whatever, 20 years ago, SIS, Silicon Integrated Systems or something, even clones a freaking IT8705F. Because of course I did. But it's intellectually property, top secret. You can't give this documentation for Linux kernel developers to write the driver. And the reason I point this out is I maintain, so there was an IT87 patch Linux driver enabling some more chips, because of course constantly they change it, which is also like, why do you every year need to change it, right? Yes, new silicon revision, one more fan channel, one GPO deleted or cost down version, only half the channels, like yeah, 2020 cost down version, eight fan channels were too much, we need to sell it for 2 cents instead of 4 cents or some nonsense like this. And this is why we have this mess. And only now I realized, because I deleted this patch in our amazing T2 distribution, because I thought they implemented most upstream, and only today I realized, wait a second, why don't we have sensor monitoring in most of our compute nodes anymore? It's like, yeah, I didn't review that enough, because all the chip IDs added here the last years that are still not upstream, because maintainer this is too broken, I don't have specs, I don't want to do that anymore. Years later, it's still not in the Linux kernel, and now I need to rebase this 100 lines of patches of chip IDs because, of course, nobody else does. Anyway, that's it for this video. Please share, like, and subscribe. Notified your favorite news site, Gamers, Nexus, LTT, forums, and store and whatnot, and shout it out. And at least for the RGB lighting situation, I know the Windows people also not happy. Just look at der Bauers, my neighbor here from Berlin, poll of are you happy with, satisfied and stuff with your RGB software for all those RGB Windows gaming fans, and it's like, turns out no, the software is garbage because dead beef. See you next time.